All right, everyone. It's very funny because the mainstream media keeps well, the legacy media. They're not really mainstream. They're just a bunch of weirdos at this point. Keep talking about the landslide proportions that Biden would win by if the election were held today. Biden out of nowhere. Biden 2020. Biden can do it. It's very funny because they're setting themselves up for failure by even backing Biden. And the people on the far left know this. Biden is not capable of continuing to campaign and winning against Trump. Look, he's geriatric. He's half a decade older than Trump. He doesn't have as much energy. He is a gaffe master. The worst possible situation for the Democrats, and unfortunately for them this is likely, is that Biden lasts long enough to win the primaries. He becomes the nominee, chooses a halfway decent right, probably Kamala Harris or something like that. Starts off with a bang. And he goes forth on his Trump is evil, orange man bad platform because he doesn't have anything else to run. He can't run on the economy, he can't run on foreign policy, he can't run on anything. He goes forth, and then he starts making mistakes. Under pressure, Biden cracks like an egg and makes mistakes. Now, when I look at the Dem field, there aren't many Democrats that really have the skills to make him do that, other than Sanders is okay at debating. He maybe can do it. And Kamala Harris is okay, but most of the rest of them, they're secondary. Let's face it, when we look at these debates, do they give the same number of questions to each candidate? No, it's not a fair and impartial debate. The people at the top get most of the questions. The top 3 or 4 people will be asked everything, and everyone else gets ignored, especially for the first few. But then you start getting the votes in. All Biden has to do is win Iowa, and he's pretty much got it sewn up because he'll probably steal New Hampshire from Sanders. Likewise, if he loses Iowa, Sanders probably becomes the nominee. That brings a whole different story about why the Democrats lose 2020. But Biden landslide proportion polls are meaningless. First and foremost, Biden hasn't had enough time to make gaffes yet. And he does this habitually. He did this when he was VP. He's done it before for many years in politics. Number 2, he hasn't been seriously challenged by any of his opponents. You haven't had a debate yet. Number 3, let's say he gets past all. He's not the nominee yet. You don't even know he's the one who's going to be running against Donald Trump. So the polling doesn't matter. And number 4, again, there's an effect. Once you have a nominee, their numbers will drop. Why? Because right now there are people who are tacitly in support of the Democratic Party. They're not a fan of Trump. They would side generally with the Democrats. But that doesn't mean they can side with just any candidate. I have a feeling that a lot of people who back people like Warren or Kamala Harris or certainly a Sanders, people on the further left will not rally behind Biden. Because orange man bad doesn't impress them anymore. If it did, there'd still be pink hat protests going on. And I don't mean 10 people showing up with their Starbucks lattes on the corner to shout incoherently for half an hour and free bleed on the sidewalk. I mean actual protests. They're not really happening. That's funny. They've all dried up. See, the anger peaked too early, so the angry part is no longer a winning strategy for the Democrats. And nothing says excitement, especially for those young voters that like to turn out to knock on doors and volunteer. Nothing says exciting like a then 77-year-old neoliberal who was a tough on crime lib back in the 1980s and 90s. No, nothing says excitement like that. He's already made one major gaffe on the Hyde Amendment. He flip-flopped. It was a legit flip-flop in his views on the Hyde Amendment, federal funding for abortion. He said, well, I don't have a problem with the Hyde Amendment. He got crucified by every other person in the field, and they said, oh, yeah, I've had a change of mind. No, now that you're calling me out, all of a sudden, I do have a problem with it. Yes, I want federal-funded abortions. How very funny Biden really is. I mean, he could end up snatching defeat from the jaws of victory, in which case none of these polls matter. I think as far as younger and certainly left-wing voters, yeah, having a Sanders, a Kamala or whatever would be better for the party. The problem is then you probably lose the rest of the Rust Belt. Like Minnesota might go away. You certainly wouldn't re-win Michigan or Wisconsin. You'd lose there if you're the Democrats. Pennsylvania and stuff. That gives Trump, by the way, the election, at least narrowly. Because the Rust Belt will flee the Democrats if they choose somebody like that. I strongly believe that. Biden, meanwhile, he could probably take the Rust Belt back, but he might start losing support elsewhere. I don't think he'd be competitive in Florida. I don't think he could pull it off. He'd probably lose Virginia. At that point, people in New Hampshire might punish the Democrats for not getting Sanders in. He might lose that, maybe even Maine. Well, again, that gives Trump at least narrowly the election. Remember, he only needs to win by one electoral vote. And this thing, by the way, this thing the states are trying to do, a national popular vote bill, it's unconstitutional. The states cannot choose that on their own. The way in which voting happens will stay the way in which voting happens, barring a constitutional amendment. Good luck getting enough states to sign on. Good luck getting the states to ratify that. You see, the problem is most of the states in the country would never want to give up the Electoral College because most of the states in the Union are still rural. They're not gonna sign on to that bullshit. And even if they tried, it would need a constitutional amendment. Go forward. Try to allocate to the popular vote. What happens if Trump wins that? The fact that the liberals would push that might lose them the election on that too. That'd be funny. It'd be funny to see Trump get 400 electoral votes because all the blue states are then beholden to vote for him or something. What about the what are they called? Not conscientious objectors, electors, faithless electors. What about them? And because some of those states still allow them. What if they decide to go along with their constituents because hey, they have to live in those communities? I think you might have more of a problem getting people in red districts in blue states to actually act as electors. I think you might have a problem with that. The polls shouldn't worry anybody right now if they're a Trump fan. Trump's approval is still middling. It's not great, but it's mediocre. But the economy is still churning along. There's plenty of time for him to win against China on tariffs. He already got a victory over Mexico a day ago. Things are moving generally in a good direction. The problem is the Democrats are so schismatic, it isn't clear they've got a candidate able to unify the party. That was kind of a problem in 2016. It will be a bigger one, I think, in 2020, which is why I've consistently said Trump has an advantage. It's not because he's an uber strong individual. He's a decent president. He's no JFK or anything like that. Certainly speech-wise, he tends to meander off and rant about a million different things, and sometimes he loses me during his speeches. I think I notice things that most people don't, because I have to speak to people every fucking day for 11 years. I could be part of it. Maybe I'm a little bit too harsh on poor Trump. He's not the world's greatest speaker, let's put it that way. But he's more than a match for Biden. Especially Biden if he's embattled by the left of his own party that refuses to solidify behind him. They might go off and join the Greens or something. Jill Stein out of nowhere. Jeb out of nowhere. It'd be funny if he said, I'm mounting an independent candidacy on the Turtle Party platform. The Turtle Party, I will withdraw into my shell, and so will the United States, and we'll slowly manage the country in its slow slide into irrelevance that we deserve for being, Americans or something. It's basically the Bush family line these days. That's about all. Peace out.